I remember the day my wife, Emily, first mentioned wanting to pick up a new hobby. We were sitting in our living room, the late afternoon sun spilling through the curtains, warming the wooden floor beneath our feet. She told me she felt a persistent emptiness, a restless need for something more in her life. I listened, not entirely sure I understood what she meant. We'd had our fair share of ups and downs, but I thought we were happy. My job paid well, we had a comfortable home, and our daughter, Lily, had just made the school's soccer team. Emily had once been satisfied with attending Lily's games, helping out at the local community center, and enjoying quiet nights with the two of us. Yet, she kept saying she was missing purpose. I told her to do whatever made her feel fulfilled, whether it was painting or dancing or even learning a new language. She lit up in that moment, eyes bright with excitement, and I felt a surge of relief. After all, I never wanted to hold her back from growth, but a small voice inside me kept asking if I was enough, if Lily and I were enough, or whether there was something deeper she was missing. I tried to shut out my doubts and told myself that everything would be fine if Emily could just find that spark she needed. Little did I know how drastically everything would change in the months to come. Life had plans. I still remember how it started. Emily signed up for a ceramics class at the community college 2 towns over. She said she wanted a place where no one recognized her, a fresh slate. I shrugged it off at first because I figured she just needed an escape from the monotony of daily life. She would come home a little flushed from the drive, car smelling of the clay she molded, and she'd tell me about the different glazes. Lily used to tease her about wearing old jeans splattered with color. For a few weeks, Emily's happiness skyrocketed. She practiced at home, building small figurines and coffee mugs, occasionally offering me her beginner's attempts at spinning bowls on a potter's wheel she bought secondhand. I liked watching her lose herself in something creative, though a small part of me felt an unexpected twinge of jealousy. I wondered if I'd ever seen that same zeal for life in her eyes when we were just watching TV or having a lazy morning in bed. But I pushed that aside, grateful that at least she had found something that seemed wholesome enough. I never suspected anything nefarious. I never dreamed that this newfound hobby could lead to heartbreak. When she started missing Lily's games, I chalked it up to Emily wanting to refine her craft. It made sense. She wanted to get better, wanted to excel. That's how she's always been, driven and dedicated once she latched onto a goal. Still, I trusted her. For a while, everything seemed normal, aside from her absences. I managed the household tasks, cooking dinner, helping Lily with her homework, because Emily would often text, claiming her class ran late or she had an impromptu study session with her classmates. I'll admit, I felt the strain. Lily was disappointed when Emily didn't show up to her games or forgot the parent-teacher conference. I gently reminded Emily, but she dismissed it as a necessary trade-off for her new passion. She said, "You can't expect me to be around all the time if I want to become good at this." I tried to be understanding, reminding myself that unconditional support was part of marriage. But the nights grew longer. She'd arrive home around midnight or even later, hair damp from what she claimed was a quick shower at the college gym. I noticed a faint whiff of perfume that wasn't hers. When I asked, she laughed it off, saying other students sprayed themselves heavily after class. My gut twisted in confusion, but I didn't want to accuse her of anything unfairly. She told me about a close friend she'd made, a fellow ceramics enthusiast named Jordan, who supposedly had the same creative spark. Emily began referring to Jordan as her best friend, so I was relieved to hear she wasn't alone in those late nights. Eventually, though, her phone became more guarded, and she'd hold whispered conversations behind closed doors. My uneasiness grew, but I still couldn't quite see the truth coming. One Saturday afternoon, Lily had an important soccer match, the kind that determined her place on the starting lineup for the next season. Emily had promised to come, but as I watched the opposing team take the field, I realized she was nowhere in sight. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Running late. Go Jordan!" I sighed, disappointed not just for Lily's sake, but because the excuses were beginning to sound hollow. The game began, and Lily played her heart out, scoring 2 goals. She looked so proud, scanning the stands as if hoping to see her mother's face. All I could do was clap extra loud, hoping my cheers could somehow fill the void. We won by a single point, and Lily's team erupted in celebration. Still, Emily was absent. After the match, I drove Lily home and we passed by a coffee shop we used to frequent on date nights. Through the window, I saw Emily sitting across from a person I didn't recognize at first. My heart thundered in my chest. It was Jordan, of course, but I immediately noticed something off about their body language. Emily leaned in, touching Jordan's hand gently, her gaze more intimate than I'd ever seen. I parked around the corner, watched them for minutes. They smiled, laughed, and then she reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind Jordan's ear. I felt a sickening twist in my stomach, but I still tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. Later that night, when Emily finally came home, I couldn't hide my agitation. She had missed Lily's big day, and worse, she'd lied about being caught up at the studio when she was really out for coffee with Jordan. I asked her outright if something was going on. She flinched, eyes widening like a cornered animal, but then she shook her head. "You're being paranoid," she said. "Jordan is just a friend." I tried to believe her, tried to push aside the image of her hand brushing Jordan so delicately. Instead of pressing further, I asked if she'd at least apologize to Lily for missing the game, but Emily brushed me off. She went upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen, staring at a cold plate of dinner I'd saved for her. In the following weeks, things only worsened. Emily would skip breakfast with us, preferring to rush off early, claiming she needed more time at the ceramic studio before her job. On weekends, she'd vanish for hours. Sometimes, she'd reappear at dinner time with a tired, disinterested expression, barely listening to Lily's excited chatter about school. Her phone never left her side. She'd swipe away messages quickly or step outside if she got a call. One evening, as she showered, I glanced at her phone on the nightstand. Guilt gnawed at me, but curiosity burned stronger. I pressed my ear to the bathroom door, heard the water running, and then carefully picked up her phone, unlocking it with trembling hands. The moment the screen lit up, messages from Jordan appeared, spanning midnight to dawn. My heart raced as I read words that forever changed how I viewed my marriage. They exchanged "I miss you" texts and explicit details about stolen moments. There were pictures too, selfies of them in a car, in what looked like a small motel room. The intimacy was undeniable. A scorching jealousy flared in me, accompanied by a deep betrayal that seemed to make my entire body go numb. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I heard the water shut off and placed the phone back, stepping away just as Emily emerged. She paused when she saw me, a guarded expression crossing her face. "Everything okay?" she asked, her hair dripping onto the bathroom rug. I forced a smile, heart pounding in my chest. "Yeah, just came to grab my book," I lied, patting my pocket as though verifying its presence. She stared at me for a moment, then nodded. I left the bedroom, head spinning with anger, sadness, and confusion. Nothing felt real. How had we reached this point? I replayed memories of Emily smiling at me, saying she loved me, only to realize those words had turned hollow. I wanted to burst into that bathroom and confront her, but fear held me back. Fear of losing her. Fear of shattering whatever illusion of normalcy remained for Lily's sake. Instead, I waited, hoping there'd be an explanation that could somehow fix this. Over the next several days, I did some digging. I drove to the ceramic studio unannounced, only to find it locked with the lights off. I checked Emily's schedule and realized half the classes she claimed to attend didn't exist. My suspicions intensified, and so did my anguish. I considered confronting her with the texts and photos, but I hesitated. Part of me still wanted to give her a chance to come clean on her own. In the meantime, Lily was suffering. She asked me why Mom never seemed to have time anymore, and I didn't know what to say. I made excuses for Emily, telling Lily her mother was working hard on something important. It wasn't entirely false, but the truth was far darker. One night, I mustered the courage to follow Emily when she left. She told me she was meeting Jordan at a different studio, so I trailed at a distance, headlights off, adrenaline pumping. She drove to a low-budget motel on the outskirts of town. I watched her enter a room, the curtains drawn tight. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, tears stinging my eyes. After about an hour, she emerged with Jordan. They stood outside, talking before Emily leaned in for a kiss. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was passionate, intimate. My heart pounded against my ribcage, and I felt an unbridled rage erupt within me. I sped off, nearly running a stop sign in my haze of disbelief. I confronted her the following morning. I showed her the pictures on her phone, the damning text messages. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, begging me to understand that she hadn't meant to hurt me or Lily. I felt trapped, empty, she sobbed, like I was slowly dying inside. She insisted Jordan was the first person in years who made her feel alive. The words stung more than I could bear. I demanded to know how long it had been going on. She confessed it started a couple months after she began ceramics, once she realized she and Jordan had more in common than pottery. They'd bonded over feeling lost and yearning for more than what life had handed them. Somehow, that shared longing turned into secret rendezvous, and eventually, a full-blown affair. My anger flared, and we screamed at each other until Lily woke up, wide-eyed and terrified. Emily broke down, promising to end it, but I didn't believe her. My trust had vanished the moment I saw them kissing outside that motel room. I told her to leave, and she did. For 3 days, she stayed somewhere else. I assumed Jordan's place. Lily asked me if Mom was coming back. I said I didn't know. Then, on the 4th day, Emily returned, suitcase in hand. She pleaded with me to give her another chance. She claimed she'd cut Jordan off completely. My chest felt hollow, but I agreed to let her stay. For Lily's sake, maybe. We tried to mend things, but it felt forced. Emily was home more often, no longer vanishing at odd hours. She even drove Lily to soccer practice a few times. But the air between us was thick with unresolved pain. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at her phone, face crumpling with unreadable emotion, and I knew she was thinking of Jordan. Whenever I asked, she denied it, claiming she just needed time to heal from the mistakes she'd made. We went to a marriage counselor, someone recommended by a friend. Sitting in that office, the pastel walls meant to soothe our shattered nerves, I listened to Emily recount her feelings of emptiness, her sense of being unfulfilled in our marriage. I couldn't help but feel attacked, like her unhappiness was solely my fault. She insisted it wasn't that simple, that she loved me but had lost herself somewhere along the way. The counselor suggested we find joint activities, a new way to connect. We tried cooking classes, which ended in frustrated silence. We tried going on weekend trips, but everything felt hollow. All the while, Lily hovered in the background, sensing the tension. I read her stories at night, clinging to the one routine that still felt normal. Meanwhile, Emily and I slept in the same bed, though a cold barrier separated us. When she touched me, I wondered if she pictured Jordan's face. I told myself to keep trying, but deep down, I suspected we were stalling the inevitable. The inevitable arrived on a quiet Sunday morning. Emily stood in the doorway of our bedroom, eyes hollow as she announced she was leaving for good. She admitted she'd been in contact with Jordan, that her promises to cut ties had been empty. She loved Jordan, or at least the version of herself she saw reflected in Jordan's eyes. I didn't yell or cry, I just listened, numb. Lily was at a friend's house, sparing her from witnessing the final collapse of our family. Emily packed hastily, tears falling onto half-folded clothes. Before walking out, she paused, turning back to face me. In a trembling voice, she said she never wanted to hurt me, that she wished things could have been different. I didn't trust myself to speak. I was afraid if I opened my mouth, all the heartbreak, anger, and confusion would erupt in a torrent I couldn't control. She left, and the door closed with a soft click. For several minutes, I stood there, the silence wrapping around me like a shroud. Then I grabbed my keys and drove aimlessly, ending up at the soccer field where Lily had played her first game. Sitting on the bleachers, I stared at the empty goalposts, recalling Lily's laughter echoing across the grass. My phone buzzed. It was Emily. The text read, "I'm sorry." I turned off my phone. When Lily came home that evening, I held her tight, promising we'd find a way forward, but I had no idea how.